Today is December 16th, 2014, and we are interviewing Mr. Alfred Hill at Hinsdale, Illinois. Mr. Hill was born July 16, 1923. My name is Cheryl Walker, and I'll be the interviewer. Jen Shakuga will be the court reporter for this interview. Mr. Hill, for the record, where were you born?
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
And what were your parents' names?
My mother was Mary. My father was, I'm a junior. So my father's the same name as my Alfred B. Hill, I-L-L.
And what did your parents do for a living?
My father was an accountant. And my mother was a stay-at-home, raise a kid mom. She's also somewhat of a great artist.
Interesting. Did you have any brothers or sisters?
One brother.
Was he in the military?
He was. 38 years.
38 years.
He went in the end of May 1945. And he came out of military school, went right in the Army, spent 38 years, the 2nd Division. Started out as a buck sergeant and died as a brigadier general.
How long have you lived in Illinois?
Since 1976.
Okay. At this point, would you like to tell us your military story?
I can do that. I can start out. I know exactly where I was on Sunday, December the 7th, in 1941. I was in college, a freshman year. We stopped at a luncheonette after church, interrupted it, and said that Pearl Harbor had been bombed. We all looked at each other and went on back to the dorm, and the phone rang. It was my mother and father. They said, "Stay where you are." So I finished off the semester and went in the Navy in February of 1942. And I went to fly airplanes off carriers. I was in the V5 program. And to do that, you had to sign on for 5 years. So I signed and went to school, and they decided I wasn't the kind of guy that could fly planes off carriers, but I could be a navigator. And I said, "Well, thank you, but I don't want to be a navigator." They said, "We have an option of resigning." So I resigned in late 42 and came home and enlisted in the Army. The Army said, "We need people like you." Went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and we're taking basic training. I got to tell you a story about basic training. Took all your civilian clothes away from you, and you went down through this barracks, and they eyeball you and tell you what size this and what size that you wore. And you got down to the end, and there was a platform you walked up on, and there were 2 footprints. They said, stand on the footprints. You stand on your footprints, and there was 2 buckets of concrete. He says, "Pick those up." Picked them up, looked down, told you the shoe size. I said, "Why the buckets of concrete?" They said, "Well, you get a field pack on, a helmet and a rifle. You got all that weight on you, your feet change." Never had a problem with my feet. So the Army then was looking for pilot training. So we went down and took the exam, and 4 of us passed. And instead of going to the infantry and being a a foot soldier, why, they sent us to Montgomery, Alabama, Army Pre-Flight School, and we were there for 10 weeks. I think it was 10 weeks, it's not important. And we passed there and then went to primary flight school, and we were doing real well there. And we went to basic flight school, and that was 3 stages of flight school. Went to basic flight school, and we learned to fly planes there also. And we had a senior flight leader that took us around. He was a trainee too, but he was a pilot already. And we had 10 of us, and all of a sudden there was 11. So flying under bridges and buzzing cotton fields, and we got back to the base and landed, and the colonel wanted to see us, and he said that 11th plane was a captain, and he told her, well, anyway, they said you can't fly, you can't be a pilot anymore. We sent you to bombardier school and navigator school. And he said, where would you like to go? Tom McCormick. He says, send us back to Bragg. We'll go back to the Army. So that's where we went. We went to jump school and learned to jump out of perfectly good airplanes. And got back to training, and next thing you know, we're shipping out. And they sent us overseas. We ended up in Sicily in Italy, and when the Germans surrendered, why, they were going to ship us off to Japan, to the Pacific, I should say, and go for the invasion of Japan. Somehow or other, I'm not sure what happened, but we ended up in the Brazilian jungles in Amapá territory. And we spent 6 months there. And there was a lot of Japanese and German nationals in Brazil. I guess there still are, I don't know. But we were sent up there as a blocking action on some trails that went up into Colombia and into the... They wanted to blow up the canal, so we couldn't transfer troops and through the canal. We had to go down around. Well, we were supposed to make sure they didn't blow the canal, which we did. So I didn't get home until March of '46, and that was pretty much the story. One of the assignments, we were platoon sergeants. One of the assignments we had, we'd take a town or a village. The old man would get the 4 of us together, and you know what your task is? Find the wine cellars. That was the fun part.
So did you find them?
Oh yeah, but he would make sure he got the best wine. But, that's pretty much my story. I came back with 2 arms and 2 legs, and I didn't get a Dear John letter.
When you were dropped in Sicily,
Yeah.
There's history behind that time.
Yeah, they dropped us in the wrong place at 5 o'clock in the morning. But then that was the 82nd Airborne. We were replacements we went in, and I don't know what happened, but we ended up with the 12th Infantry, and that kind of got messed up, and I ended up with the 45th Division. And the last problems we had were Monte Cassino. I don't want to talk about that.
Okay. So you were in 2 branches of service.
Yeah.
You were in the Navy? 3.
Navy, Army, Air Force, and the Army.
Okay. So the Army, Air Force changed over to the Army then.
Well, the Army, the Air Force was part of the Army.
Right.
And then it became the Air Force as a separate. But my father was in the Navy in World War I. I was in World War II. My brother was in World War, tail end of World War II. He was in Korea. He was in Vietnam. And, he's got 2 or 3 Purple Hearts he had.
What was your highest rank?
Sergeant. A cadet. Is it all right if I take coffee?
Yes. You talked about your first day in boot camp and the shoes. Was there anything else that was memorable about boot camp?
Yeah, in our processing through, I ran into a good friend from Atlantic City, New Jersey, and he and I hung around together while we were there. Of course, we were split off. We didn't reassign. But the funny part of it was that I'd known him since we were all just little guys. My mother was born and raised in Atlantic City, so she went back home every summer, and that's how I met Taylor Stokes. And we met in basic training, Fort Bragg, and spent probably 3 or 4 weeks together, and then he was moved out someplace. And after the war, I got my education, got into electronics, telecommunications, and Jay Taylor comes into my office one day in Long Island, New York, and he said, "Hey, I can stop by and see you. I'm in the area." I said, "Good, I'm looking for a man," so I hired him. That was a fun part of the life.
That is.
One of the things that was, when we went to basic training, there were a number of us that were shipped in, this group going in, and most of us were from the Blue Ridge Mountain area, where I was raised in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and for my 12th birthday, my mother bought me a shotgun and a rifle because we hunted in the mountains. My father was not a hunter or a fisherman, but my friends' fathers were. And so when we got to Fort Bragg, we knew which end of the gun the problem came out of. So we didn't need a lot of rifle range training. In fact, a couple of us ended up with training other young people which end of the gun they use, how to shoot and so forth. So
do you still stay in contact with those friends?
I did, but they're gone now.
So you had a long-time friendship with them?
Oh yeah, we went through high school together, and we all went. Well, I shouldn't say all of us. The four of us who went in were all good friends, but there were about half a dozen of us. One went to the Marines, and one went to the Navy, and 4 of us went to the Army. So, but it seemed like the thing to do at the time.
After your boot camp, did you get a leave?
Yeah.
And where'd you go?
Home. Then we went to Texas, staging area, where they shipped you out. And if you were there more than 30 days before your unit shipped out, then they had to give you 10 days leave. So I went back up to Chicago, this area, and a girl I was kind of fond of. And we went up to saw her parents, and then went out and saw my parents. Came back to Chicago. I was all this in 10 days on trains.
Did you marry her?
Yes.
You did?
She waited. And we had 6 kids. 5 boys, 1 girl. And to this day, that girl thinks she's a boy. And she lives here in Hinsdale.
That's nice.
Her husband's a doctor. And my first wife died overnight, unexpected. And the lady I'm married to now, she and her husband, and we were all good friends. We went to the same church together. So we were getting ready to go to Florida last January, a year ago, and she said she's a nurse. She says, I think you have pneumonia. We're going to get a chest check before we leave. Well, my son-in-law is a radiologist. He took the picture. The next day he called and said, let's get together. We got together. He said, well, we found out one thing. You don't have pneumonia. Well, great. He says, but I found a malignant tumor in your lung.
Hmm.
So we went through that. They did a PET scan a couple of months ago, and there's no sign of cancer in my body any place. I gotta get another one next month. And that's my favorite story. The Germans didn't get me near the cancer.
I'm glad to hear that.
So that's about all I can tell you.
Well,
There were a lot of other things happening, but I don't talk about that.
what was the weather like in Italy and Brazil?
Well, Brazil was, and to this day, the area they had us stationed was Amapá territory, and it still is not a state. And the weather there was, which is big in the tropics and a rainforest area. And Sicily and Italy were, Italy is about the same as it is here.
Did you get to drink a lot of good wine there?
What?
Did you get to drink a lot of good wine?
We liberated some here and there. But they were very generous.
Good. When you were in Brazil,
Yeah.
what kind of exotic animals did you see?
Oh, snakes. And wild cats, panthers, lions. I mean, the cat family, I can't tell you exactly what they were.
Mm-hmm.
But we were stationed up in headhunter country. And there was a tribe near us that they weren't headhunters, they were just an Indian tribe. And they were just wonderful.
Did you eat their food? And
we ate our food, but we ate theirs too.
what was their food like?
Spicy, and God knows what was in there, and he's not telling me. But the alligator and anacondas, which are snakes, they're the constrictor family.
Mm-hmm.
And the one time we were out on patrol and we had one of these, probably I'd say 15-year-old, was a guide, so we didn't get ourselves lost. And he was all excited because we were in a kind of a pasture area. We were in the forest, open area, and there was an anaconda there, a snake, and the snake had just swallowed a pig, as it turned out. But a piglet, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You could see this long. He's about this big. He's 18 feet long, and this kid just grabbed him, pulled him up by his head, and took his machete. He said, "Oh, the family's going to eat good." That was, and I came down with malaria and a big dysentery. was shipped into, there was no hospitals up where we were. They came in, there was a number of us had a problem, so they flew us down to Belém, Brazil, and put us in an army hospital down there. And so far, so good. I mean,
did you ever go to the Panama Canal Zone?
No.
No?
No. We were just seeing that nobody else got there either.
Was there any food that you ate while you were in the service that you don't want to eat anymore today?
Well, I've gotten past that stage.
Have you?
One of the first meals my wife, right after we were married, one of the first meals she fixed was lamb. And a lot of lamb was in the canned rations. I just, ugh. But then she cried. But I eat lamb now. I gained weight. Everybody else lost weight. I went up to 165 pounds. And I didn't drink coffee or I didn't smoke till I got in the Army, till I was in the Army. And that became a habit. Well, they gave it to you. And to this day, I don't smoke anymore. I stopped smoking Labor Day, 11 minutes after 8 on Labor Day, 1968. I had three cigarettes left and a pack of Marlboros. Boom, that was it. But I had a good doctor. He was a VA doctor. And I left that out. After I got back, my malaria and dysentery were kicking up pretty bad. I was in a VA hospital for 3 months, Lebanon, Pennsylvania. It was a brand new hospital.
Mm-hmm. What did you do? What did you do for recreation? Did you have entertainers come and visit you?
Well, yeah. After so many days in the line, so many weeks or months, depends on the situation, you go back to R&R.
And where did you go?
Well, back behind the lines. I couldn't tell you exactly where.
Okay.
But they played ball and played poker, drank beer, and had replacements come in to replace those that you lost.
Mm-hmm. Did Bob Hope and his?
Well, Hope didn't, but we did have USO troopers come through, entertainers.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody really famous, but it was good. And somehow or other, we go back to R&R, we see movies, and I knew how to run a 35 millimeter projector, so I ended up showing the movies. But, it was an experience, and you get camaraderie that you wouldn't get as a civilian. So my father felt the same way, I guess, and my brother, I know he was a professional soldier.
Mm-hmm.
He died at 58. A history of cancer in the family, and it caught up with him. And my wife died at 58.
When you returned home, how did you get home? Did you fly? Did you take a train?
Train. They took a bunch of us and we were discharged Camp Atterbury, Indiana, and then we're given money to get home. So that was it. I came into Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. There's an Army reservation, Indian Town Gap, which is right just north of Harrisburg. And did they send us there to discharge us, which was probably 50 miles from home? No, we had to go to Camp Atterbury, Indiana, to get processed.
And then
I'll tell you a story that I start to remember. We were being discharged, and they were processing us through, and this lieutenant said, here's some papers I want you to sign. It's for reserves. I said, I don't want to be in the reserves. I said, I've had 4 years and 1 month in the military now. I said, I don't need any more. He said, well, I think maybe you should. And I said, well, why do you think I should? He said, because I've got your records here, and I see that you had 30 days of brig time. I was court-martialed. I don't know how I got a, I'd be looking at how I got a good conduct medal. But what happened is we were in one of the air bases, and this fellow that I knew, you know everybody, his wife and his mother were coming down to see him for the weekend, and he couldn't get a weekend pass. He was on KP. I gave him my pass, and he came back in. They checked it, and next thing you know, he told him I gave it to him. I ended up getting a primary court-martial. Wasn't bad. They gave me 30 days.
But you got a good contact medal.
I still got a good conduct medal.
That's what's important.
Yeah. I didn't need medals. I just wanted to get home in one piece. But when I came into Harrisburg, my parents came down to meet the train, and I got off with my duffel bag on my shoulder, and I was down under 100 pounds. Just a malaria, that doesn't do it to you. I walked right past them. They didn't even recognize. Anyway.
Did you join any veteran organizations?
I belong to the Legion.
Do you?
And I belong to the VFW. Oh, there's another thing, too. The VFW, when I went in, of course, I looked at my records, and the military, I don't know whether my records went up in smoke, that big fire in St. Louis. I don't know whether they're there or not, but they have me down as serving in the Pacific. I don't know how that happened. Typing error. So it was never changed. So but I know where I was.
After you came home, I know you went back to school.
Yeah.
But did you take some time off? Or did you go right back to school?
Yeah. I came out in March of '46, and there was no school. It was full of veterans, and there was no school, and I couldn't get in until September of '46. But I was married 3 months after I came home, and I was working at a local electronics company, and there's a story that's there were 4 of us that went down to state employment office, and they said, they asked what we did and what our backgrounds were. So they said, well, what kind of job, anything you've got. Because there was a thing called the 5220 Club. Anybody ever hear of it? That's where the government gave the veterans $20 a week for 52 weeks after you came home. And he said, well, he said, I've got, let me see. He said, oh, here's one. He said, they're looking for people up at Standard Piezo Company. It was a telecommunications, radio, parts for radios. And they said, they're looking for grinders. I said, I don't know. Well, here, take this and go up. about 10 blocks up the street. Carlisle's not that big a town. And it's this Standard Piso company. I said, oh, my father's one of the owners of that company. And I said, I mentioned to him when we came back, I said, is anything going on in your company? Oh, we're laying people off. He said, we're not hiring anybody. And here's this car. And my mother found out. She was so upset with it. But anyway, we got there. We were full-time, went to school, and then we were part-time. And my parents thought I should grow up to be a doctor, and I had no interest in that at this point in time. So I ended up in the electronics field, telecommunications, radios. I was in engineering and manufacturing and sales and marketing. And I ended up with about 4 different companies. I was never terminated. I was always recruited. And I ended up with Motorola in 1969. And they were a wonderful company.
Is there anything that we've not, that you feel that we haven't discussed in this interview?
No, as much as I want to talk about.
Okay. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, what are you going to do with all this?
Well, I will tell you. But at this time, what I'd like to do is thank you for your time that you gave our country and for serving our country. And I would also like to thank you for allowing me to be the one that interviewed you today. I appreciate it.